Hi everyone, Michelle from Holistic Pillars. Today I am completely honoured and really excited to be welcoming psychologist Rob Hart. Hi Rob.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks, Michelle.
Rob comes with 20 years plus experience in the energy sector and global roles. He has a background in wellbeing, human performance and psychology, and he's the founder of Zest Learning, and he's been running that company, I believe, for about 10 years. But most recently, he's been an integral in supporting employees at AGL, Energy Company, during the pandemic, which is where we've crossed paths, which has been lovely. Welcome, Rob, and thanks so much for taking some time to talk to me about wellbeing.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to be here.
First of all, I would actually like to know, I've just given a bit of a broad career background, I guess, but can you tell us a little bit about you, your background?
Yeah, well, I studied at Loughborough University in the UK, which is Team GB's headquarters and a centre of excellence for sports science. It's well known for that. And I did a science degree looking at psychology, human performance around the physiology side of it as well, to see the difference, I guess, the connection between brain and body. And what I liked there, we had great access to some really excellent research looking at the impact of things like sleep, exercise, diet on mood, way back in the 90s, and seeing how that sort of really has flourished in the last few years. I worked in a few consultancy firms for a while globally, and then into Shell, which got my interest in the energy sector. Began in the UK and London and the Netherlands. Spent some time on projects in the US, around Asia, then finally came to Australia about 18 years ago. And 10 years ago, I left corporate life to set up a business called Zest Learning, which looks after predominantly the fly in, fly out workers, if you might want to call it that, in the mines and resources sector. That's people that are away from home for a long period of time, say 3 to 4 weeks. And it can be quite a pressure cooker of physical, mental, and emotional challenges that they've got to overcome. If they're away from loved ones, if they're dealing with incidents on site. And I saw that there's a massive market in there to help people through, I guess, the mental health aspects of workplaces. And we're there for 8 or 9 hours a day. So to me, it was an interest area to sort of get into that more corporate side of things. And I had an interest in my last role in corporate as a general manager of learning and development for Shell in this region. So you could bring learning and development principles along with some health principles and really instigate that in companies and create a market for it. And 10 years ago, this was not such a popular term, thinking about psychological safety and mental health and all this. It was still quite a stigmatized area to be looking at. So we got into the resources sector, and that spread to banks, law firms, and beyond. And we've been really privileged to work with some great clients, global names, and work with many leaders and employees around the world. So it's been a really lovely journey for me. But thanks, Michelle, for asking the question.
Oh, wow. Especially in today's environment with pandemics and stuff, I'm fascinated and really inspired by your work that you've been doing at AGL. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit on what you've been doing there?
Yeah, well, it was a perfect storm in 2020, as we can probably all allude to. I remember sitting there with an order book full of trips that we're about to do, to go out to WA, to fly on to New Zealand and do a lot of work with different parts of the world. And I remember it's March, everything closed and everything went online. And you started to see how we all had to work differently. So AGL came up just by a discussion with somebody I knew in the business who was a former client of mine. And this 4-day-a-week role came up, so I could still do my Zest Learning 1 day a week. And I thought, wow, what an exciting time to go into corporate. And what was wonderful was I found that there's a real appetite. And AGL, I have to say, is one of the exemplary employers out there that really cares about its staff, a dedicated person to run wellbeing in-house with some resources to do so, executive support. So we do everything from tailored workshops to help teams go through change, uncertainty, and anxiety. We also have some things around supporting people's mental health while working at home. We look at physical health, running seminars on sleep, diet, mood, everything else you could imagine, and also help teams deal with the emotional uncertainty and setbacks that they might face as the company restructures, which is not private knowledge anymore. We are going through a major change. So we've got everything from mental fitness apps, a 7-stream employee assistance program, as I said before, executive sponsorship, resources to run workshops in all the locations, operational sites. That might be toolbox talks in front of operators, to C-suite executives where we're working with them to help understand how we manage leaders through managing a team with people that might experience a mental health wobble. But we have things like flu vaccines and all these lovely things that happen throughout the year, and just, I guess, inspirational little campaigns to get people moving, people being aware of their diet, just to keep nudging people along in the right direction. And we've had some great engagement in what I say as well. It's been a real privilege again to be in that position where you can help people through and see the impact it has day to day on teams and individuals.
And I'm the number one fan.
Well, likewise, it's a bit of a love in on the wellbeing side.
I love working there, but they've been so supportive in the last 18 months, and I've just, loved the work that you and the team have been doing there. I want to talk about, so we're going to have a little chat today. We're actually going to have 3 chats around some wellbeing aspects. I want to drill into the word wellbeing. It's a real buzzword at the moment, but
isn't it? Yeah.
What is it? Like, what is wellbeing? What's your
wellbeing? Yeah, great, Michelle. This is such a great question. Well-being. We see wellness, well-being, flourishing. All this kind of stuff that comes out here. Now, I see well-being in 3 parts: physical vitality, mental fitness, emotional agility. Now, we can all probably say that we have a leaning towards one of those where we want to do a bit better in, and one where we might have everything all nailed down and pretty good. I mean, I always see that physical is the one that people often say, yeah, I've got my sleep going okay, I'm okay with my diet, I do a bit of exercise, but geez, I get overwhelmed mentally, and then that has impact on my emotions. We put it into 3 segments because it's easy for people to sort of, I guess, isolate what's going well at certain times, where do they need support. And we called this at AGL Thrive, because when we're thriving, we're feeling like we're on top of the world. And you can just have a lovely walk in the sunshine and feel like you're thriving. You can have a nice discussion with somebody and feel like you're thriving. And it's not such a pinnacle to reach towards. When we say well-being, we call ourselves health and well-being. And that tends to sort of, some people will go, oh yeah, that's good, I'm into health, but others will feel it's being almost told what to do. So when we talk about thriving, we shift people's view about what well-being is, and it's kind of, who wouldn't want a bit more energy? Who wouldn't want a bit more thrive in their life, even in just brief moments through the burdens and responsibilities we carry? So I would say it's across all 3 areas. You could even add a 4th one around meaning and purpose. In some corporates, that becomes a little bit nebulous and fluffy for some, but no one can argue with the fact that emotions, mental health, and physical health tend to be the 3 pillars that hold up your well-being. So that's, in a nutshell, what we might define well-being as.
I love it. So, which is why you're here. So Holistic Pillars is all about the 4 pillars of health. And I think that, I know I'm not by any means an expert in some of the categories that we're going to be talking about, but we're going to be doing a 3-part series of short chats about various areas of wellness. And the first one is going to be sleep. And I just wanted to briefly talk about, the next one is going to be around mindfulness and maybe some breathing and mindful eating. And then the 3rd one was around all-day energy and what that might mean. But first of all, I want to kick off today's with sleep. So I believe there's a science, and you're calling it sleep science.
Sleep science, yeah.
Right. So talk to me about sleep, and why do we need good sleep, quality sleep?
Sorry to answer a question with a question.
Yeah.
But if you look at yourself, Michelle, and I know you're very into the health piece here.
Yeah.
What do you think in your family, your peer group, the people that you work with, what do you think stops people sleeping well? What do you think it might be? What are some things that stop people sleeping well? And that might be the same for your listeners out there.
Could be stress. It could be poor diets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just things on my mind would keep me from sleeping.
Yeah.
Maybe.
These are very common ones and top of mind, I think, for a lot of your listeners and subscribers. So when we talk about sleep science, there's often a lot of terms out there: sleep architecture, sleep hygiene, sleep science. It all is the same kind of thing if you want to be really creative about it. I like to call it sleep science because there's 3 parts to sleep, and we run programs at AGL, and this is not big noting by any stretch. It's more to show the level of interest people have in this mysterious science, which has grown a great deal of interest. We ran a session back in March this year, and we had 500 people out of 4,000 employees come along to a 1-hour session on sleep, and then the demand exponentially grew for intact team sessions on sleep. I would see sleep as the pillar of well-being. Mm-hmm. If you are worried about your diet, that's a good thing to worry about for sure, and your exercise levels. But until you get your sleep regulated, it's kind of immaterial. because that has an impact on every organ in the body, a number of systems in the body. And if you don't get those in equilibrium, you will see some longer term challenges to get the right weight, the right levels of energy, and all these things that you might be looking to strive for. So, Michelle, would you like me to sort of give an idea of some of the three things to watch for on sleep science? Would that be helpful?
Absolutely. Take over. It's yours.
Yeah, and jump in too, because you might want. I don't want to ramble either. You jump in if you see
that's
something
just fascinating. I just find it fascinating because, I mean, I can talk about my sleep. I'm quite a good sleeper, but boy, I can really feel it when I haven't had enough, for whatever reason. So, yeah.
That's a great point. Can we just touch that on that before we go into sleep? What's the reason why? What kind of food do people typically crave when they're sleep deprived, do you think? And it may not just be you, but people that you talk to. What sort of foods might we crave?
I'm just thinking it's the quick fixes. It might be high carbs, it might be some sugar, it might be caffeine, it might be the things that are also inhibitors to good sleep, I'm thinking. I don't know.
Definitely, you're absolutely on the money there. And where are people's moods, emotions when they're a bit tired and grouchy? Maybe I'm probably preempting the question there, but we've had 4 hours sleep, let's say, a couple of nights in a row. How's our emotional energy like? What's our mood like, do you think?
Flat.
Yeah, it is. Some people get a bit of a shorter fuse, a bit more frustrated by things. And mentally, are we pin sharp or jelly-like when we're trying to solve a problem? Our brain.
Foggy jelly.
Yeah, totally. So you've hit the nail on the head here. It's a tripartite again of emotions, physical and mental. Let's look at sleep science. Broadly, we've all got a circadian rhythm. That's circa meaning around, dian meaning day. If we go into the Latin of what it all means, it's circadian. That's a roller coaster, like a Big Dipper. And it's a peak in the morning, it starts to wane in the afternoon, and then towards the evening, we start to become tired. Now, if you could all imagine, I'd like you to all sit there if you're sat there in your kitchen, it's even better. Have a look around for a little grain of rice. That's what we're after. We want you to find a grain of rice somewhere in your pantry. Basmati rice to be specific. There's a part of your brain which is the size of a grain of rice. It sits behind the prefrontal cortex here, and it links to the optic nerve, and it's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN for short, suprachiasmatic nucleus. Size of a grain of rice. That regulates your sleep-wake time. Now, that's very susceptible to light. When the sun sets and the sky is orange, we start to see, the eyes will tell the brain that it's becoming dark, so we start to release melatonin. And many of you who've come through lockdown may have found that your sleep pattern was massively disturbed because you weren't getting out in the morning for your commute to go to work or school or wherever you might be attending. And therefore, we missed that vital dose of blue light, which suppresses melatonin production in the daytime, lifts our serotonin levels, that's the feel-good hormone, and gives us a burst of energy for the day ahead. Many people were getting out of bed in the dark, sitting behind a screen all morning, not getting outside. And that messed with their mood and their sleep. So as melatonin's released, you'll start to feel sleepy. But there's some other parts to it. Throughout the day, these things are happening. 3 hormones. We'll have a quick look at them, and then we'll do some sleep tips. Does that seem okay? Is that right?
Yeah, fantastic.
Number one, anodosine. That's a barometer, like a weather barometer that's susceptible to pressure in the environment. Adenosine builds up in the morning when we wake up, and it's a pressure to fall asleep that slowly builds in the day. And almost picture it like you're sort of filling up with it, if you like. So by the time the evening comes, it's almost up to here, let's say, just metaphorically. And then melatonin kicks in, axis in the middle, the perfect storm to knock you out and make you fall asleep. However, screens, light bulbs, bright light suppresses all these things down a few hours. And that means that we extend our wake time. So we've got to try and find the perfect storm of those two. So that's the first one. Does that make sense? If you've fallen asleep on the couch before, you'll know that's the perfect storm. Does that make sense? Yeah. And Michelle, I know you've done some phenomenal work in looking at diet and how that impacts our energy levels and our overall health, because you've got quite a story on that yourself, which your subscribers and viewers will be very familiar with. But I think for many of us here, the important thing is around appetite management and the kinds of food we crave. And I'm glad that you mentioned we do go for the quick fixes, the highly calorific but not nutritionally dense sort of fixes like caffeine and sugars. You have something called your APASAT, which many people won't have heard of, but it is your regulatory process in the body for driving your appetite. It's often driven by sugars and glucose and insulin responses. But I want to bring it away from that to look at what sleep does. If you sleep for the golden magical number of 7 to 8 hours per night, unbroken as much as you can, you will release after 7 hours in the body a hormone called leptin. Leptin, that's the satiety hormone. That makes your brain realize from the receptors in your gut that you are full and satiated. You require no more fuel. When we sleep less than 7 hours, even 5, 6 hours, our body needs more energy just to stay awake. So guess what happens? You release a hormone called ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and that makes us crave quick fix glucose and sugars to lift our energy immediately and give us a surge to get on with our day. And that becomes an addictive cycle. We get a dopamine hit sometimes from those things like caffeine and sugars as well, which creates the craving. Our gut flora tends to crave those sorts of foods, creating inflammations and all sorts of problems, which means we get on this constant unsustainable churn of poor eating, adds weight to us. We store fat differently under pressure. If any of you felt that you had some COVID kilos put on, it's not being disrespectful, but a lot of that was driven by poor sleep and inactivity. Visceral fat builds up in the body because the body starts to hold on to that, and it's harder to shift when we try to get back into a normal rhythm. Yeah. So anything to ask on that? That's the anosine, ghrelin, leptin, and there's one more to cover in a moment.
I'm just sitting here thinking, yeah, look, those COVID kilos, it just makes sense.
Yeah, and
Well,
those visceral fat, we can be very slim and lean, but then we hold our fat around the organs,
yeah,
deep visceral fat.
yeah,
It's an energy store that's hard to break down again.
yeah.
So sleep will regulate your metabolism, your energy levels, your appetite, among a whole range of other things like your blood pressure, equally to how your cells regenerate. And that's where we're going next. The other two hormones is human growth hormones. If you sleep 7 hours or more, you tend to release what we call neurogenesis. That's the process in the brain which reconnects brain cells and replenishes memory at a very simple level. And also, there's an anti-inflammatory response in the body that repairs cells, tissue, muscle fibers, this kind of thing. And also immune system, the telomeres in the immune system are rebuilt if you sleep 7 hours or more. And it's a whole process going on while you're sleeping. Now, if we don't get 7 hours regularly, trying to get your sleep right in your 30s is important for when you get to your 80s, because there's some work from Professor Walker, who wrote a great book called Why We Sleep, very good evidence-based book. And he talks about something, it's called amyloid. And that's a sticky protein that builds up in your brain. Now, if you can visualize the brain as a basketball in a plastic bag, the old school plastic bags with a bit of water in there, and you move that around, that's a good image to have in your head for how our brain is stored in our skull. It's in a membrane, and it's got some fluid in it. And that fluid gets cleansed if you sleep 7 hours or more. It's a process. I'm making this very simplified, but it's a process that will extract that out. But what happens is the oxide can stay in there if we don't do that regularly enough. And we get these microdots of sticky proteins called amyloid, which can disrupt brain function. So neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, dementia, memory loss, the connections aren't quite there, but these are microdots that you can't see with the naked eye, but they do build up like a plaque, like we would have in the lungs or the arteries from activities that lifestyle choices we've made. People aren't aware of this, and it will have an impact later in life if you don't take care of yourself. There's the hormones at play here. That's the reason why we need 7 hours.
Okay, I want to touch on the magic number of 7 hours.
Yes, good.
So, is it a magic number, or is there some science behind the 7 or 8 or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, we need to look at the life cycle first of all. I'm happy to put it out there. I'm in my late 40s. I've always worked very hard on my sleep because I saw the benefits for it. So, for example, athletes, when I worked at Loughborough, well, I didn't work there, I studied there, we would see that getting your sleep right the night before a big tournament or boxing match or tennis game, if you got 7 hours consistently the week before that big game, your lactic acid, i.e. the thing that makes your arms feel tired and your legs feel tired, the release of that would be reduced by 10 to 30% the next day if you have a good night's sleep. And it typically came up to be between 7 to 8 hours. Now, everyone's going to go, oh, well, I need less sleep than that. I need more than that. Yeah, that's sure. I get this all the time. For evolutionary points of view, teenagers need different sleep cycles to adults. And we're seeing a real problem due to these gadgets that we all have that proliferated around 2012 at maximum saturation, which means that we saw a spike in sleep problems. But to come back to the magic of 7 to 8 hours, it's as follows. Well, look at this. Teenagers, they're better. They get up at 10, they're good. Get up before that, not so good. And they can go to bed a lot later. The elderly, who've retired have less stress on them and need a little less sleep, but you still should be aiming for 7 hours. Most of us in prime time, between 30 to 65, in a corporate job or working nights or whatever we're doing, we do need 7 to 8 hours for all the reasons I shared before, because the appetite management, the cleansing process in the body to clear things out, to give the brain a rest. There is a psychologist that talked once that for every hour we're awake, we're having micro brain damage. The brain needs to sleep to replenish fully. That's why we dream. That's why parts of the brain are shut down, so that it's not always on. Bill Clinton, Margaret Thatcher, others who are in politics and quite well known, used to brag about the fact that they slept for 4 hours a night. The long-term impacts were that Clinton had a heart bypass, Thatcher had neurodegenerative diseases early on, and these are fatal issues that once you've got them, you're managing a health issue, which isn't a good issue to be managing. So 7 to 8 hours is very important to regulate all the systems in the body. Each organ is impacted by how you sleep. That's the reasoning.
Fantastic. And then I want to talk about quality.
Yes, quality is important.
So we're talking about these sleep phases.
Yep.
So, because I can say I can go to bed and hope I get 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But is that quality? You know, like, so do I feel refreshed in the morning sort of thing, or am I kidding myself?
Let's have a look at that. There's something called functional intoxication. Now, probably a few people out there enjoy a glass of wine, a pot of beer, a little shot of spirits or something like this. A standard measure of alcohol, as those in Australia will know, is going to put 0.05 into your bloodstream of alcohol, which is the limit that you can drive on in Australia. Now that does have still some impairment around speed and distance judgment and spatial awareness. Functional intoxication is exactly the same as what happens to people if you sleep 6 hours per night, not 7. You have a slight impairment. Your cognitive reasoning and ability to process is impaired, and people don't realize it till they have a damn good night's sleep, which might be that 8 hours. So quality is important. Okay, the first half an hour after you lose consciousness, I like to call it, when you're laid in bed, will be the time you get your deep sleep. 90 minutes you'll get roughly there, which is the real deep recuperative replenishing sleep. Then you get a bit of light sleep and rapid eye movement. Those phases are just like bookmarkers. Rapid eye movement sleep, the body moves a little bit. You see your heart rate go up a little bit. And that's to stop the blood pooling and the organs kind of getting stationary. We need to move a little bit in our sleep, even subtly. Light sleep tends to be the cusp of where we're dreaming, into rapid eye movement where we would see vivid dreams again, and then into deep sleep for recuperative. So it's little chapters. Deep sleep wanes by the morning. You're kind of going 90 minutes, then 60, then 45, then 30, then 15. Not perfect, but that's the kind of way to see it in little chapters. Yeah, those sleep phases.
I love it. So I just love this chat because I think we all take it for granted we're going to get sleep. We don't actually realize what that's actually doing to us.
Yeah.
So how do we get it? So
how do we get it?
What's your suggestion for top tips or what we would do?
Top tips. Love a top tip. Who doesn't love a top tip out there? Now, what I've seen is the room comes alive when people get a sense of, I thoroughly love my work, and what I find a real pleasure in doing is you get into a group of operators who are on shift work and they're just looking for a bit of a quick cure. And they take one idea out of 6 and they go, this is great, I'm going to do this. And we've got a mum who's got a child at home that can't sleep so well, and she's on, just come back from maternity leave into the workplace. All these people tend to sort of grab onto one of these tips and work really hard on it, and you will see some improvement. So what are the magical tips? Would you like to hear them?
Sure.
Let's do it. Number one, you ready for this? Lock in your wake up time 7 days a week. That's the toughest one, and I'm going to give you all out there a challenge, because this is the one that isn't easy. It's the toughest one. And people go, oh, I love my laying on the weekend and the sleeping. If you're getting up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. each day, Monday to Friday, and you sleep until 9 on Saturday, Sunday, by Monday the next week, you're jet lagged by 4 hours. All the things that were released in the morning, the hormones, cortisol, testosterone, everything else, to lift your energy, doesn't happen till later. Scary stat, strokes, aneurysms, heart attacks are most prevalent Monday morning, because people get up and thrash the body hard if they've been led around in bed all weekend. And as we get older, the risk is heightened. We've got sludgy blood as we get older, narrower, brittle capillaries. We try and force all that through as we rush into the traffic and get on the phone and get ourselves hyped up. You're putting strain on the body. So it's jet lag. How do you discharge that sleep debt? Get to bed early the next night a little bit. Wake up and lay around in bed in the morning on Saturday, Sunday if you can. You can still read the newspaper, cuddle up to your partner, have breakfast in bed, do whatever you'd like to do. And there you have it. It's kind of just being conscious is the main thing here. You can have an afternoon nap, and we'll talk about that later, but
Yeah.
try and just manage that wake up time. Very important. That's why shift work messes with our system long term.
Yeah, because we all just think we need to have that Sunday morning sleep in, but it could be doing
Oh,
more damage, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it can be. It can be. The next one. This is the big one that will change your life. I promise you, I think there's two that will change your life massively. This is the big one. Spotting the sleepy signs on the couch, which is yawning, eyes dropping, and that kind of drop. What should you do you reckon, Michelle, when you spot the sleepy signs on the couch? What do you think would be a good bit of advice for our listeners?
Go to bed.
Definitely, but how often do we resist it? And we're cuddled up on the sofa. You might have your partner there, your family around you, the dog, whatever it is, and you're under a warm blanket, and you just go, and it feels lovely. But when you wake up, the challenge is this: it's going to take you 90 minutes to get back into a sleep cycle again, a deep sleep cycle. And therefore, you just take the edge off your tiredness around 9 o'clock at night. Gotta go upstairs, get all this stuff off, and get into bed, clean your teeth, do the usual rituals. And then you're led there going, oh, I'm just awake enough to start worrying about all those things I didn't do and all the things tomorrow. Your brain whirs and you are in the danger of not getting that good sleep. So it messes with what we call your sleep architecture. That's the cycles that you need to go through. So get to bed. You're quite right, Michelle. And if it's too early, just go for a walk around the room, have a quick stretch, and try and stave off that sleep till around 9ish or whatever it might be that you retire to bed. That's the big one. Get off the couch before you fall asleep.
Discipline, though, they want, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Do you want the next? Do you want the next big one?
I do.
We're in Melbourne here, right? So all those around the country and the world, coffee here is the most serious thing in the world. You've never been anywhere so serious. And you see this? This is a coffee. We're not demonizing caffeine at all. We've just got to be careful with the timing. So caffeine. Can we name? Do you reckon between us, Michelle, we could come up with 5 sources of caffeine? I'll go that one. Coffee.
Coffee.
Yep.
Some soft drinks.
Yep.
Chocolate.
Yep. Tea. I'll go tea.
Tea, of course. Yes, of course.
Coffee, tea, soft drinks. There's another one, which more than soft drinks, something a bit more jazzy.
Oh, alcohol.
Alcohol could do if it's got mixes, but I'm going to go energy drinks and pre-workouts.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So caffeine's important. It's all about timing. Very simply, if you skimming through this and you just want to get to the point on it, it's 8 hours before bed. Cut it out. You work back from your normal bedtime. Why is that? 4 brainwaves: beta, alpha, theta, delta. These are not COVID variants, but brainwaves: beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta, fast waves when you're in the office, when you're working, when you're having a conversation. Alpha, think about being in the shower when you're washing your hair and you're feeling warm and suddenly an idea pops in your head, just a creative thought you've been trying to muster up. Theta, that kind of semi-meditative state. Delta, deep sleep. You cannot access delta waves required for deep sleep if you've got any trace of caffeine in your system, and that can kick around for up to 9 to 10 hours after you've consumed it. 350 milligrams is your limit per day, really. One of these is about 120. Mother Energy drink, the 440 ml can, 13.2 milligrams, not milligrams, teaspoons of sugar, and a whopping 400 milligrams of caffeine. Pre-workouts, anywhere between 200 to 300. So throughout the day, if you're bubbling along with your caffeine, try and kick it out, like I say, 8 hours before bed, and that will enable your body to process it and you to get deeper sleep. It's a good rule, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm a bit naughty because I always have a coffee after dinner. But yes, I'd have to start cutting that one out.
Yeah, definitely. Good alternatives are things like there's some nice herbal teas you can buy in the market now. Just get a good quality one, we can actually see the leaves in it. The mint is good at night with no caffeine, really good for digestion, calms the body too. Chamomile, not everyone likes that, but can be pretty good. Chamomile and spearmint, something like that. The problem is people always say to me, I can have a cappuccino before bed, I'm cool with that. You might be able to get to sleep, but your brain is showing a very different story. It's hyperstimulated still. It puts it back into beta waves, which is what we would be having now, having this conversation and looking at a screen. You don't want that to fall asleep with, do you?
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to stop my coffees of night. Okay.
It's a very emotional habit to break and something we look forward to. And I'm not saying just about that to you, Michelle, but for everybody online, we may have little things that we really look forward to. What you'll find is that if you kick out that afternoon coffee, by about week 2, you'll find that you don't need it because you're actually getting better sleep and it will start to have other benefits for you. So I know it's a hard news story there. The other one we should touch on is this. Look, 45 minutes before bed, get off them straight away. For those that've got an Apple device, you can go into settings, display and brightness, and then switch off. Look at display and brightness, you'll see something called night shift. You can turn that on, and what it will do as the sun sets is bring up automatically an orange screen. And we learned before, didn't we, that orange light helps you sleep, but blue light kills your sleep. For Android, I think you can flick up and choose blue light filter. But the big thing is you should not be stimulated in the brain with a screen anyway. As I said before, after 2012, these were proliferated across the market, and we started to see an exponential increase in sleep-related disorders in the young, particularly after that time. So we know that this is having an enormous impact on the quality of our sleep. Cost the economy, for those that care about numbers, $66 billion a year for poor sleep, and a lot of that's driven by addiction to caffeine, stimulants, and screens, which is preventing people sleeping well. So, if you're a business person out there or you care about that stuff, it's not just a human impact, there's an economic one too. And that wakes some people up more than others as well.
Okay, there's another thing I have to cut out in the evening.
Yeah. Podcasts. Do you remember these sorts of books with 3D pages? We can sit and read those with a lamp. And so a book or a podcast, as long as you're managing the technology. It's good not to have devices like phones and things in the room anyway. Just keeps them there.
A lot of people use them as their alarms and things like that, though, don't they? So
I bought a whole team of clients once a small alarm clock, which was branded with my business name, and just to remind them to put it away from the bed, to get out of bed and answer it, and keep these in a charging station out of the bedroom, because it just prevents the temptation. It really does.
Great tip.
This tip now, quickly, if you've got the time, is this book. The next tip, write it all down at bedtime. People go, oh, I just put my to-do list in my phone. No, don't do that. Get yourself a journal by the bed and write down. 2 reasons for this. You use a different neural circuitry when you're writing and manifesting your thoughts on a page in this way, and it's more conscious and more deliberate. And when I work with people with high levels of anxiety or post-trauma, or we're doing a talking therapy or a healing strategy, we'd get people to write down what's on their mind, and it lets the brain get some temporary respite. It could be a to-do list, a shopping list. What I didn't do today, what do I need to do tomorrow? Oh, I've got a great idea. I just want to dot point down. It gives the brain a moment's respite. And you know what? You may wake up in the middle of the night with a wonderful idea, and if you can muster up somehow of getting it down on paper, do so, because it will just let that rest. It's a really simple process, and you can look back in 3 weeks if you wrote down your worries and see, did they really manifest to be quite so bad? It's just a good document. You'll be surprised the effectiveness of it. Just trust me on that one.
I have used that technique for years, where something might be on my mind and I'll literally get out of bed and write it down and go back to bed, and I'm good to go. Yeah,
exactly. You're in good company, Michelle. For those out there that like music, people might remember, and forgive me if you're under 40, you might not know this person, but Keith Richards was the guitar, well, is the guitarist of the Stones. It's amazing he's still with us through his lifestyle choices. But he wrote an iconic riff called Satisfaction, and it's in the 60s. He woke up in the middle of the night with a guitar he's sleeping next to. He had a tape recorder in the bed, in the bedroom, an old school reel-to-reel, kicked it on, played this riff, and then for the rest of the tape, it's him snoring. But he had this moment of creativity in his sleep, and that is legendary now. And that riff is one of the first things you'll ever learn if you play guitar out there. Go check it out on YouTube, Satisfaction by the Stones. He found that riff when he woke up in his sleep and recorded it. So there you go. Wow. The power of creative thought.
Really?
There you go. True story. So we've got, I think, 1 tip left, and that's a power nap. A power nap, 20 minutes gives you 3 hours. Would you believe that? 3 hours. Now, power nap. If I said to you, you've got to have a nap, what do you think the workplace might say, Michelle? Any workplace, not just our friends at AGL, but outside of that, what do you think? What does nap kind of tend to create for people?
I don't know. For some people, it might, I don't know, being lazy or
yeah, there is that connotation.
or yeah.
So, you know, we have a Mediterranean heritage in parts of our family, and you might see here that people would have a siesta and they'd sleep for 20 minutes in the afternoon. And I've worked on stations and refineries around Asia where people did take a 20-minute nap after break, and their lost time injuries were lost substantially because in the heat, they actually had a bit more wherewithal to get through that. Now, you can look this up on, I can give references to this. There's a podcast by a gentleman called Nick Littlehales. He's a professor of sleep and sports science who worked with La Liga teams in Spain and the Premier League teams in the UK, soccer. And what he showed was, he called it a critical recovery period, not a power nap. Doesn't that sound a little bit more verifiable and highfalutin? A critical recovery period. Because so I can say to my boss, I'm gonna have a critical recovery period for 20 minutes. Now, when you think about this, I was a bit of a champion for sleep, and we created this with a client once, something called naptivism, where we tried to get some of the senior leaders to promote an afternoon nap for 20 minutes during flu season. And we saw that there were less errors, less absenteeism, more energy in the day. People got home a bit less stress. Cortisol levels were lower in their saliva. There's a lot of studies that have been done on this. So between 1:30 and 3, if you were a corporate worker or a desk worker or just going through a normal 9 to 5 kind of lifestyle or beyond, 1:30 to 3 is the most dangerous time to drive a car long distance. It's worse than it is at 6 o'clock, and most crashes will happen. We're in our lowest ultradian slump, which is part of the energy cycles we go through. 20 minutes there will give you an enormous benefit, and it doesn't have to be led in a cell somewhere or a bed somewhere at work. You can just put an eye mask on, put your head down, or go in a quiet room and have 20 minutes. You don't have to fully fall asleep. You could just listen to a meditation. You could do something like that. All very possible, and it gives you 3 hours more focus. Really, really beneficial.
And nana naps.
Nana naps, yeah, we call them that, and that's right.
Yeah.
So to recap on those tips: lock in your wake up time, manage your caffeine, write it all down at bedtime, ride the sleepy wave in bed, not the couch, nana nap. We talked about caffeine, didn't we? And screen time. There you go. There's a few fail-safe ones that will start you on your journey to a better night's sleep to head towards that 7 hours.
Oh, I've already taken away 2 things I will start doing immediately, and that's less caffeine at night and screen time. Definitely bad things that I do.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's amazing advice and really interesting topic, Rob. I reckon we could talk about this for hours.
Can we?
Intricacies, and I know you're passionate about sleep, and it's sort of your thing. It's just amazing. But thanks a million.
My pleasure.
Sharing
Thanks for having
that
me.
information. And yeah, maybe we do have another sleep talk and see how I go with putting through a few of your tips.
Love it. Sounds great, Michelle. Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone for listening along, and I hope you benefit from these tips.
Yes, and stay tuned, everyone, because we're going to have Rob back on and we're going to be chatting through more mindfulness techniques. Speak soon. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.